Right, moving on to our next guest speaker. I'm really, really pleased and excited to announce that we have Hector Minto from Microsoft, who is an accessibility evangelist. I first met Hector last year when he came to the University of Reading and gave a presentation that really blew all of the audience away, so not too much pressure. It's going to be interactive, it's going to be fun, and I hope you enjoy the next session. Please join me in welcoming Hector Minto from Microsoft.
Going to plug in. So good morning, and thank you so much for the invitation to come here. This is an audience I really want to engage with. My role at Microsoft is essentially to make disability matter, and that's just not externally. Internally at Microsoft, we have 130,000 employees in the world. We have a high representation of people with disabilities, and more increasingly, we want Microsoft to represent society at large. As technology gets further and further into our lives, as every organization thinks about how it delivers its services digitally, more and more it's going to have to make sure it represents everybody. And that includes people with disabilities. I'm just going to change the feed. Does anybody in the room consider themselves to have a disability today and would put their hand up to share it? No. And that's kind of where we are quite often with disability. We want to turn this conversation to where people just go, yeah, I'm colorblind, and just immediately tell their lecturer, their tutor, their colleagues, their other students, so that they can more routinely be included. Typically, most human beings want to be helpful, believe it or not. Most human beings want to be helpful. When you see somebody who's using sign language to communicate, how do you speak? How do you confidently go and have that conversation with somebody who's deaf? Or do you kind of feel awkward yourself? Yeah? And in that situation, who is the disabled person? Is it them, first language sign language, or is it you, first language English? This is a great question to start the hour. So disability in the modern world is something that Microsoft is particularly interested in. We're talking about 1 in 6 of the global population consider themselves to be excluded or have a disability. Across speech, across mobility, hearing, vision, increasingly mental health is a conversation where we're starting to talk about that in disability terms. But the thing that really worries us most is this exclusion piece, where if you are disabled, you have double the chance of being unemployed. So people stay in education. People with disabilities quite often stay in education as long as possible, yeah? Because actually the statistics after university are a big problem, yeah? You are routinely excluded. And it's not necessarily about your talent or your skills, it's about the systems and the design of the systems to routinely include. So as we think about Microsoft's mission statement to empower every person, every organization on the planet to achieve more, think about that in terms of the person. Think about that in terms of the difference of the people involved or included in your organization. Any glasses wearers in the audience, by the way? Why didn't you put your hands up a few minutes ago? It's a question, right? Like, why did you not? How many of you feel disabled when you pull your iPhone from under your pillow in the morning to read your email? Is that just me? Thank you. But how many of you feel disabled at that point? As I move into my 40s, I'm mid-40s. It's the same line for a few years now. But I'm increasingly disabled. It's coming to all of us. Yeah? If you do not consider yourself to have a disability now, you're going to consider yourself to have a disability in the future. And so routinely, you have to think about how you are going to be in this group, and are you designing for your future self? Are you routinely designing for your future self? So when we talk about disability, and as I said at the start, my job is not just to come and sell disability and Microsoft's brand. I am working with Microsoft internally about our own culture around disability. And so when we talk about disability, we don't just talk about what we would all consider to be the wheelchair icon and permanent disability. We equally talk about people who are temporarily excluded through injury. Anybody broken their wrist ever? Broken their arm? Thank you. You were disabled at that time. How did you type? Yeah? Did anybody tell you to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clicks on your keyboard to bring up sticky keys to type one-handed? That's been around since Windows 95. Yep. So your temporary disability and your lack of confidence to talk about your temporary disability made you more excluded for the time that you were recovering. Yeah? Why are we in a world where when you're in the accident and emergencies and you're being discharged with a broken wrist with a temporary disability, why is the ER nurse or the A&E nurse not saying, hit your right shift key on your computer when you go back to work in the morning? Is that because you're sitting there going, I'm getting 6 weeks off? Or is it because you actually want to go back to work? Well, you might not want to go back to work, but you certainly want to go back to life. Your Facebook, your Twitter feed, you're going to want to tell everybody about that broken arm, right? Okay? So if you don't consider yourself disabled when you are injured, then you are not investing in the time to be productive and learn more about people with permanent disabilities. And of course, you'll then be on a flight, holding a cup of coffee while the turbulence starts, thinking, oh my God, how do I type this email one-handed? And you'll turn sticky keys on because you'll realize when I have a situational disability, I know there's something that helps me. How many people know how to magnify on a telephone? Come on. Come on. I know it's the morning. But if I do this and pull my fingers apart, you all know how to do this. Who taught you? Trial and error. Experience. The UI was designed with that in mind. It became apparent, yeah? How many of you confidently know how to do that on a Windows PC? Without touchscreen? Trick question. Is a certain button. What is the button? How do we know? Control plus, I heard. Control plus is great in a document, but if you have a vision impairment, just in the document doesn't help you, does it? All the menus are still invisible to you. There's a magnifier app, but what's your keyboard shortcut? How do you get to it? The challenge here is how do we get people to routinely know this? If you want to know, it's Windows plus. You can do it on your devices now. And so as I zoom in here on my PC, I can bring you directly to this word. Hang on, let's just minimize this. But I can bring you directly to this word in my presentation. And I am suddenly a demo god. Yeah? Because actually, when I want to bring my audience's attention to information, magnifying's really useful. Yeah? If I'm a lecturer and I'm like showing a complex spreadsheet or a complex chemical formula, and I think, oh, I want to just zoom in on that, why do you not know Windows Plus? Is it because we're not having that conversation with people who actually have vision disabilities? If you're not living in this world, you're missing out on the way that the system was designed to be worked. Windows Escape, to jump back, if you want to see something really cool, Windows Plus, I only learned this the other day, Control-Alt-Space takes you to a helicopter view where you can do that and then it zooms back in. How cool is that? Right. Okay. Anybody who didn't consider themselves to be disabled seen a couple of things they might use in the future already? Right. And this is what we do. When we talk about disability at Microsoft, we're not saying there's this group of excluded people where we need to get the philanthropies team involved and make sure we really work on digital exclusion. What we're saying is, this is a group of individuals who tell us how to design the best products, yeah? Because we recognize that disability can be three-formed. Okay, so we're embedding, or we're kind of working to get disability embedded in the DNA of Microsoft itself. And I want to just kind of knuckle down on a few of these things. If we don't have a culture that talks about disability in a positive way, then we won't have representation. If we don't have representation, then we cannot affect our systems. Yeah? Our systems must be inclusive as much as our product. When we've got disability represented in our organization, we get great feedback on our products really quickly that's really valid and helps a much wider audience. Yeah? And then we get the future innovation, which is, it's a Microsoft talk, you're going to hear the word AI later on. Okay, so we're going to talk about AI. So this is Jenny Layflurry, she's my boss, she's a Brit, she's deaf. Not for Twitter, this line, because I get into trouble, but if you are tweeting, don't use this line, please. I'll be able to track you. She's the first disabled person leading disability at Microsoft since Microsoft was started. What does that tell you? What it tells you is, normally in most organizations, there's a department for people with disabilities, a compliance team, a legal risk team, yeah? And when we talk about student inclusion, we quite often are thinking about legal risk of exclusion, certainly in other countries around the world. But we've got to get people with disabilities leading those teams because they don't care about legal risk. They care about real inclusion because they need to be included. So in my team within Microsoft at Accessibility, we have over 90% representation of disability in the team. It's the disability team, yeah? But we've got every disability covered, and rightly so, because that viewpoint needs to be coming out regularly about, is the holiday booking portal accessible if you're blind? Well, the best way to find out is to have a blind person on your team, yeah? And then routinely, we're getting all these issues flagged, okay? And we're deliberately talking about disability as strength, yeah? It's difference, but it's also strength. It is not, oh, don't talk about disability, call it diffability. No, it's disability, yeah? It's disability, but it's a value we need. It's a strength, it's a muscle that we need in our organizations, because otherwise we're going to be designing excluding the whole time, and we're going to get all sorts of loss later on down the track. So people with disabilities are talent, and their disability is a specific talent that we need in our product teams, in almost every part of Microsoft. It's also a design challenge. So for the techies in the room who love, creating technology, this definition really helps when we're training our teams. We don't talk about disability as a personal health condition. If somebody has Down syndrome, or has had a stroke, or has had a from-birth learning disability, as far as we're concerned in terms of the design challenge, we have the same disability to take on. So we don't really care about the diagnosis. The diagnosis doesn't really help us. But disability being a mismatch in human interaction allows us to knuckle down on that permanent, temporary, situational disability challenge. And it becomes a challenge that people want to take on. And actually, while I say that, it's definitely a challenge millennials want to take on and beyond. This social good, going to work to actually do something that matters, is something millennials really want to do. So some of these challenges around disability are something that the teams really want to get involved with. So in our systems, we have things like a disability answer desk. Has anybody ever used it? There's your challenge. So we have a free global disability answer desk. If you have a student with a disability or a colleague with a disability and they're having a problem with their device or their third-party AT, we have a free disability answer desk where you go directly to Anne and others who use the technology that your students use or your colleagues use, and then says, oh yeah, that's a known bug, don't try and fix it, we're working on it, yeah? Because she uses JAWS the same way your student uses JAWS, okay, as a blind individual, all right? So we have a disability answer desk. We're looking at our systems and going, who's excluded? We also have things like an Autism at Work playbook. This is so that we can deliberately get people with autism into Microsoft, but recognize that the interview system doesn't work for people when you've told, turn up at an appointment at a certain time, be really friendly, be really sociable, maintain eye contact, do all the things that are going to get you into Microsoft, and then you go, oh, my autism means all those things are pretty challenging. So we've changed the entire interview system to make sure we proactively get people with autism into Microsoft. Why do we want people with autism at Microsoft? Because they are incredibly talented. Yeah? Their neurodiversity brings talent to Microsoft that we need. But the system has to be adjusted to proactively include. We screen in, we don't screen out. Okay? This also means that we've got to use technology to create communication between people who consider themselves to have that disability. So these are the employee resource groups at Microsoft. So we have Asian, blacks at Microsoft. These terms are their terms, by the way. People choose their terminology. They agree their terminology for this globally. Parents at Microsoft, women at Microsoft, military at Microsoft. We are using Yammer, we're using SharePoint, we're using these tools to create global communities to make sure that they're talking about the challenges of working at Microsoft and the systems, okay? The great thing there is that all these systems have to be also technically accessible as well, because, sure, as you know, if you've got the blind group, it's actually called the VIP group, the visually impaired group, the VIPs at Microsoft. By its very nature, that must be accessible if you're blind, right? And then that system gets used by everybody, because also, believe it or not, we have intersectionality. There are blind women at Microsoft. Yeah? Okay. So, all of this culture play is at this website, aak.ms/disability inclusion, where you can see all of the systems pieces that we're putting into place. But we are a technical company. That fan's just gone off. Suddenly you just feel like more relaxed all of a sudden, right? We have a hack culture, and this is something that universities have as well. People are hacking, designing, challenges, yeah? But we're making sure that people with disabilities are at the forefront of that. There's a phrase in Microsoft, an inaccessible hack is whack, which is a bit American. But what it's saying is, when we get together as a company to do these amazing hack events, there's a policy that says everything must be accessible. Even if you're doing something, completely unrelated to disability, it's a value, yeah? And because you need it to be accessible, the teams have to then go and find people with disabilities to feed into their hacks, which generates inclusion and also generates different ways of thinking to the challenges. People with disabilities have always been the best problem solvers in society. That telephone that you're all hanging onto was only invented because Graham Bell's sister-in-law was blind. Yeah? The disability drove the innovation, and we've seen that all through human history. So let's get into some of the products and some of the impact our employees with disabilities are having. Before we do, though, it's also worth remembering that 70% of disability is invisible. Yeah? People didn't put their hands up when they were wearing their glasses. Yeah? People don't necessarily tell you they're colorblind. People don't tell you that they struggle with reading, that they have dyslexia. 75% of UK employees with dyslexia do not tell their employer. There's a challenge there, right? Because there are lots of things we could put into place to make them more successful, but if we're not having that conversation, how do we help? So, we have things like the immersive reader. Anybody seen this? Great. Not many, though. Right, let's go interactive. Shout out your website, please. Somebody's work website. Give me it. Come on. You're not going to be embarrassed, I promise. Say again, please.
Alpha Bravo Delta November AC.UK.
Okay. University of Aberdeen. I cannot read. How do I get by? Straight away, in Edge, every single website in the world has right-click, read aloud. We can now read the website with highlighting.
Find
it will
degree.
read to you. Yeah, it will go through the page. You can click on individual
Scottish
words and it will start from
University
there.
of the Year.
But it will read the website with highlighting.
Top 30
Where's it
UK
gone?
University, Complete
reading
University
somewhere.
Guide 2020, and Scottish University of the Year.
Where's it
Times
reading?
and Sunday Times Good University Guide 2.
Okay, I'm going to pause it a second. Okay. As we go into a particular point that we're interested in, and let's go into here, eventually you get to something that can invoke the reader at the top here. I almost went to my magnifier, but everybody's happy so far. I can now click on this, and it forces your website into a readable view. You're familiar with this concept from your phones, a reader mode. Yeah? Remove the adverts mode is what most people use it for. Yeah? But we can go much further here. In your standard browser, we can now change the different themes, so we can go for a good one for visual disabilities. We can also invoke the learning tools, and so we can put widest spacing between the words. We can go for a dyslexia-friendly color, yeah, and we can, I just did a restart, we can start to highlight the nouns, the verbs. We can split the words into their syllables. Everything suddenly becomes readable when we put the reader overlay on top of it. So we've taken your website, which might be compliant accessible, I'm sure it is. Yeah, you've done all your WCAG, I'm sure it is. But that still doesn't make it usable if you're illiterate. It still doesn't make it usable if you've got severe dyslexia. So this overlay is put on top. This came from Microsoft hack culture. This came from us basically getting a group of parents, actually, of kids with dyslexia and going, the world's going digital. We've got to make it accessible to them. How do we get stuff to routinely read? I'm going to quickly switch to my phone. You're going to keep me honest on timing, aren't you? Give me a 10-minute warning, I think. Thank you. So we're jumping to the phone. Okay, back. So this is the piece of paper, this is the agenda for today. That is inaccessible as well, right? If you can't read, the same tool, that same piece of paper is inaccessible. Yeah? And this is the situation people with vision disabilities, people who have severe dyslexia, people who just cannot read yet. Yeah? This is the challenge they face every day. The world says to them, we expect you to access this. Taking a photo on your phone, sending it into OneNote, allows us to invoke the immersive reader, exactly the same, and I can take that paper world into a digitally accessible world, yeah? Where the whole thing can be read to me, and it reads with highlighting, it reads out loud. It also allows me to, with my dyslexia, have a line focus put on, and close. So now I can scroll through it like this. And if I see a word that I don't understand, a single word that I don't understand, I can click on it. It gives me the word that can be spoken, the word in my first language, Arabic, and some pictures to help me understand the meaning. We took the paper world and made it accessible. But that only happens when we process it through the cloud. Yeah? This is the benefit of the cloud. Yeah? If you can get it processed by cognitive services, if you can get things to happen to information, we can routinely make them more accessible to people with disabilities. Okay, let's jump back. Thank you, Gary. So next. Oh, by the way, 16 million people a month choose to have website content read to them rather than them reading it. That's interesting. How many people have heard of this before, the actual read aloud option in web, before you got here? Yeah, okay, that's good. We're getting there. Yeah, it's actually interesting. I spoke to some kind of disability experts on this, and they went, oh, you'd need this bit of software, and I was like, okay, fine. And then I turned to a millennial intern, and I said, how do you think you would get it to read aloud? She went, oh, the computers can speak. It must be able to do it for you. Yeah? So there's a different mentality coming through, a different expectation. My other favorite story there about just how kids access technology. We have an Alexa in my house. I like it. My wife hates it. My kids love it. Yeah? And that's actually a pretty interesting relationship with that piece of technology, just in terms of how it's used. I say to my technology, Alexa, play Radio 4, because I'm getting old, as we've established that already. I then say, Alexa, set volume to level 7. It kind of does it. My 9-year-old walks in and goes, Alexa, shush. And it understands it. We use technology in different ways. Okay, so the accessibility checker next. Everybody checks their documents for spelling, right? Have you been to one of my talks before? No, you don't, actually. You now trust your computer to change your spelling for you, actually. That's the world we've gone. We used to have a very manual spell check, didn't we? Yeah? It used to kind of go, oh, red line, okay, manually underscore red line, click on it, check the spelling. Yeah? Now we just kind of trust that it auto-corrects for us, and it doesn't always do it right, yeah? Which gets in trouble sometimes. How many of us have checked a document for accessibility? Thank you. We'll talk afterwards. I'd love to hear about it. But this is just standard in Office. You can check every document for accessibility to make sure that when you share it into your SharePoint and it goes into your student ecosystem, when a blind student comes in next year, your stuff is routinely accessible. How many people even know what an accessible document means for somebody that's blind? Okay, best way to learn? Run the accessibility checker, because you just get to fix everything in line and you will learn what is a good accessible document. It generally means good scan order. It means good scan order. It means labels behind pictures. How many of you tweet? Yeah, how many of you tweet photos? Get your hands up. How many of you put image descriptions behind your photos for people that are blind? I've got 12 blind people on my team. The representation forces the change of behavior. Yeah? What that also means is that everything becomes more searchable because you're putting descriptions behind your images. Okay, but we didn't even know this was a topic a minute ago. Let me introduce you to Veronica. This is a very short video. How am I doing on time?
Woman walks with a white cane.
My mom always told me when I was going through issues in school that I was blazing the trail for other students in the future. Technology doesn't just make things easier for people with disabilities. It makes things possible.
Microsoft plus accessibility. Veronica Lewis has a Surface.
My second semester of my freshman year of high school, I received permission to bring a laptop to school, and it was amazing to see my grades go up. It's amazing to be able to feel included in the classroom. I'm a junior here at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, and I am doing information technology. I want to invent things for people with disabilities. I created a blog called Veronica with 4 Eyes because I realized there are so many more students out there with low vision, and I'd love to be able to share my experiences with them. I use various Microsoft Office 365 applications in my day-to-day life. I have a magnifier and large text enabled on my computer. I started using Microsoft Sway when it first came out. One of the best things about Sway is it's compatible with screen readers, and it also can do alt text beautifully. Every presentation that I've created with Sway has gotten 100%. I use Microsoft OneNote to take notes in class, and I'm often using the feature where you can take a picture of the whiteboard or blackboard and have it scale perfectly. One of the cool things about Word is that there is a built-in accessibility checker, so you can determine whether documents are accessible or not. I've introduced that function to a lot of my professors when creating accessible materials and showing, hey, it only takes less than a minute to make a document accessible. Why wouldn't you do it?
She has her picture taken by George Mason's statue. Microsoft. Microsoft.com/accessibility.
So who's the expert? Veronica's the expert. Yeah? Veronica's the expert in her lived experience. I'm telling my professors to make stuff accessible for me. Yes, 100%. Because when it's as easy as saying, I've got a PowerPoint or I've got a Word document, send to Sway, we can then have it given to us in Sway. That's her preferred method. There are lots of other methods. But she wants it in Sway, and then she can routinely make her content accessible with their support. And now that professor then has a brilliantly accessible document that next year, when a new blind student comes in, they're just more confident that everything's going to be routinely accessible for them. Okay. However, some of you might be thinking this is work. And it is work. You know, to make stuff routinely accessible, it's much easier when you've got students or colleagues with disabilities. Yeah? It's much easier to justify it, that the time is worth it, when you want your colleagues to access this information. But AI is going to play a role. Over 5 million images have been annotated by AI using Office 365. When you put an image into a document and you have this option enabled, yeah, we will basically use machine learning to tell you what's in that picture, which gives the blind person a fighting chance of understanding what you're trying to say. Yeah? Okay? So it takes that information and says this is a... Now, it doesn't always get it right, but it puts a ribbon underneath the picture so that you all see it and go, that's not what I want it to be, and you change it. And if you're consumers of technology, just public consumers, as you put different descriptions in, that feeds into the future model of description for people that are blind. That's a very cool thing to do. Okay, so AI has a role to play. Next, AI has a role to play in PowerPoint Designer. Gary and I had a bit of fun with this earlier at the back in AV. Gary is an expert on PowerPoint. Gary is not an expert in PowerPoint, right? Gary's an expert in PowerPoint circa when we stopped learning about PowerPoint, and this is the truth. Like, how many of us are reinvesting every year and going, what's new in Office? Yeah? We kind of just accept how we learnt anything in life, yeah? We stopped, yeah? But PowerPoint is doing so much more now because it updates every month, and it's web connected. So we have a feature in there where you can literally dump photos into a document. It resizes them beautifully. It puts the alt text in, and you have a professional-looking slide in seconds. If you type in text, it brings you images in to give added value to the text meaning, yeah? And gives you beautiful slides all the time using AI. Now, the reason I'm telling you about this is that employees with physical disabilities at Microsoft made that happen. Because they met with the PowerPoint team and they said, why does it take 85 clicks to create a beautiful looking slide? Try having muscular dystrophy and doing 85 clicks per slide. And they went, right, let's hack on it. And they hacked on it and then came out of PowerPoint Designer. This is now the global hero demo for PowerPoint for everybody. Everybody shows this first when they're showing PowerPoint. Yeah? But it came from disability. And as he said at the start, we shouldn't really be surprised by that. Next, captions. Why have we not had captions at UCESA this year? No, this is a challenge. Well, there's two reasons why we didn't have captions here today, right? No one's deaf or hard of hearing, are they, in this audience? We asked them earlier. They said they weren't disabled, right? So nobody said it. Anybody willing to say that they find it hard to hear sometimes? Right. Anybody willing to say, when a Finnish speaker, it was very clear, yeah? But sometimes, well, what did he say? And you could have had a caption there to kind of go, oh, actually, that helped, yeah? How many people find captions useful on their TV? How many people have been reading the studies that literacy levels shoot up when kids have captions on all text? Yeah? Well, now they're in PowerPoint. So if I click here, I can have captions in every lecture. As long as I've got good audio and I arrive early enough, I should be able to get some reasonably good captions coming up on the slide here, and it's giving me absolutely accurate transcription of everything I'm saying. Now, Shazana at the back, you can read a bit of Urdu. How's it doing? You can be polite, you can be truthful. I can't read it, I can speak. Sorry, okay. Great, I'm going to change it. Watch this. Oh, I love that. Oh, that now goes into one of my anecdotes. Thank you for that. Okay, subtitle settings. Let's take it off that and we'll go into English. Bog standard vanilla PowerPoint. This is just PowerPoint. So here I am in a lecture. I've come up to Leeds today and I'm going to talk to you all about accessibility. Now, it's really important to understand that when we think about disability in the modern world, that it can be permanent, temporary, or situational. How's that doing? Helpful? Helpful. Built in, free, readily available. Why are we not using it? Now, this is interesting. So it's not always perfect. People who are not deaf and don't need it, laugh. People who are deaf or hard of hearing get past inaccurate captions very quickly. But we're absolutely right to say that it can be distracting. And how many of you would feel confident to use this in a room full of year one university students? Some would, some wouldn't. But it can be distracting. Trust me, it's distracting at first. Windows XP becomes Windows Sex Please very quickly. That's fine, we've all been through that, and we all laughed about it. 3,000 lawyers at Microsoft all laughed about that. I was in that room. But over time, this has got better and better and better. I'm using no special audio feed in here. I could spend some time getting a Bluetooth headset plugged in and getting much better audio and getting my levels right. But this is helping, yeah? And it's quick, and it's available, and it can translate as well. Now, there's another option you can plug in, which allows you to log in remotely on your phones in a different language, and that can be less distracting. But we can also make this white text on a pastel pink background for the kid that's deaf and ask them to sit at the front. And that's also okay if they say it's okay. Yeah? You do not have to say it must be in font size 25 and white on a black background. Yeah? You can encourage a culture of sharing in your organizations where people say, look, it really helps me if you put the captions on, but I don't want to distract the rest of the audience. That's fine in a culturally confident organization. Shall I leave them on or shall I turn them off? Great, thank you for that. There you go, right answer. Okay, I'll jump on. I will share these slides with you afterwards, but this is Microsoft Stream. This is part of Office 365. It's readily available to you. This is where we put all of our meeting recordings in Microsoft. Okay, so we have Teams. Have you heard of Teams? Teams is, I'm not allowed to say Teams is like Skype for Business, but Teams is like Skype for Business. But it's also Slack as well, right? And it's all this stuff built in. It's a communication platform, okay? File sharing, video calling, the lot. It has utterly changed the way Microsoft works. But all of these videos, all of these meeting recordings go directly to Stream. So think of that as every lecture goes to Stream, okay? What that means is that you've got transcriptions of every lecture available that can be edited, and that you can export caption files from to create captions for videos, yeah, routinely. You can do all the editing. But the beauty for me is that all of it is searchable, yeah? So before I went to see Vodafone recently, I went into Stream. Think of it, 130,000 Microsoft employees recording their meetings, putting them in, yeah? And I searched keyword Vodafone. And I walked in to see the Vodafone account manager, and it says, I just heard Vodafone reached 100,000 virtual machines. And he looked at me and went, accessibility, dude, what are you talking about? Yeah? And I went, well, I know that you've got 100,000 virtual machines at Vodafone now. And he was like, how on earth do you know it? I keyword searched Vodafone in Stream. We can go straight to the part of the video where somebody said that word. Yeah? Imagine a student being able to go, benzene, 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 the type of bonding in benzene. Hang on. Keyword search benzene in all my chemistry lectures and jump to exactly the part of the lecture where the lecturer said the word benzene. That's powerful. Yeah? But it's disability driving it. Let's go a bit further. This is Teams. This is me yesterday doing my slides last minute. I'm sorry. That's a bad habit. I want it to be fresh and new. But this is me in a Teams call. Some of you might be good lip readers, and so you're going to be able to see me talking, or not. But I can then also turn on live captions just for me to view, yeah, in Teams. And now you'll see in the bottom corner, I've got a blurred background as well to help with lip reading, so you see all the background disappeared. And there are the live captions in every call. The student who needs it, or the colleague that needs it, is the only person that needs to turn that on. Okay? So you don't get the distraction then. But of course, if we've also got captions, and we're watching those captions in a web browser, how about something like this? So this is a video for something called Seeing AI. Seeing AI is an amazing app that allows the blind people to narrate the world around them using AI. I'll play with it in the break with you. It is absolutely amazing. But this is a video about Seeing AI with Hindi captions. How many of you have ever put Hindi captions in a video? How many of you would even know where to start to put Hindi captions in a video? How many of you would like a feature where it says, play the video and then tell your browser to translate live, and it takes the English captions and just goes into any language you want, straight like that, because that's what that's doing. So your stream video is using AI to capture voice. It's generating a transcript, but because we've got a transcript, we then have exportable captions, or it allows us to take that transcript and translate it into any language for any student or any colleague, or any parent. Stop talking about disability as it's just that person in front of you. The disability isn't just the statement you've got about that student. Some parents have disabilities. And unless we're being routinely inclusive, we're going to be leaving people out. And this is a great example in terms of voice. So many of these features are just available for you to go and learn about at aka.ms/accessibility features. Some of you pick up your phones and take pictures at these points. What do you use to take pictures? Don't use your camera. Use Office Lens. Because when you come to these events and you have a great time, and you then go back, how many of you honestly ever look at any of those photos ever again? Okay. It takes a bit of time to scroll through all those photos to find the information you want. If you sent it to OneNote, it uses optical character recognition, and you can keyword search accessibility, and it will find you that slide directly in OneNote. Can you see? We need to start thinking about what we're trying to do, yeah? OCR is one of the benefits of processing stuff through the cloud. Okay, let's get to the future. This is Satya Nadella. Satya Nadella is the CEO of Microsoft. It is important, actually. Satya has a son with complex needs, complex disability, severe cerebral palsy, okay? When Zane was born, Satya thought his life was basically finished. He was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this now? How's this impacting me? Because that's how it feels quite often when you have a child with, who's needing so much more attention, okay? It took him a few years to work out that actually his job was to make Zane empowered, yeah? And actually, he would be happier if Zane had independence and Zane had control. And he's taken this value into the board at Microsoft and said, look, this is exactly what we're trying to do with every organization in the world. We keep thinking about all the problems they're giving us, but actually, why don't we just empower them to do more with our products? Listen to what they're trying to do and design around their need. And it's kind of a culture change. But what he's really focused on is inclusive design and the benefits of inclusive design, and accessibility being the result of it. These are all hacks, some of which you've seen, inclusive presentations, the accessibility checker, learning tools. iDrive is unbelievable. So iDrive uses machine learning to drive your wheelchair to your fridge with no programming. Okay, so you can drive the wheelchair with your eyes. Yep, that's quite easy, actually. Eye control. Oh, by the way, eye control is standard in Windows 10 now, so you can all control a computer with your eyes, Windows 10, with a very cheap camera. But we can now drive wheelchairs. They're now using HoloLens to use machine learning to recognize where the fridge is in your house. And then somebody who has a severe level spinal cord injury or ALS, motor neuron disease, can now say, take me to the fridge, and the wheelchair will literally know where the fridge is and drive you there. Yeah? This is the level of cool stuff that we're doing on disability. Seeing AI, Soundscape is an amazing app for university campuses. You should definitely look at that. That allows blind people to navigate their environment around them through beacons, through virtual beacons. And the Xbox Adaptive Controller is definitely a favorite. So the Xbox Adaptive Controller is essentially a controller for people who can't use the standard controller. How many people feel gaming disabled? Come on. Come on. Okay. Who's got kids? Let's start like that. Okay. How many, keep your hands up if your kids play Fortnite. Good. Keep your hands up if you've never played Fortnite with them. Yeah. And keep your hands up if you've looked at all of it and gone, forget that. I couldn't even begin to start how I do that. Even people who felt they could actually do computer games. I mean, this is like, I'm okay with the gun and the movement. The bridge building, forget it. Like my kids just kill me every time. I lose. So we have a feature inside Xbox called Copilot. Anybody in London should come to the Microsoft store. We're opening a new store in Oxford Street next week, next Thursday. In the store, we'll have tons of gaming, tons of Xbox, and tons of disability, actually, with the Xbox Adaptive Controller. This allows people to plug in their own switches to control those buttons. But if you're somebody who has a severe disability or muscular dystrophy, all of those buttons at the same time to play Fortnite is that's a non-starter. Yeah? It's impossible. But imagine if you were sharing the controls with a friend or a brother or sister. And that's what all of you can do on the Xbox at home. So you can turn around to your kids and go, right, I'll do the jumping and the shooting, you do everything else. And you just share the controls. Yeah? And that feature, which includes all of us in gaming now, came from this hacking on disability. Let me just show you a quick video to wrap up.
My name is Grover.
John.
My name is Ian.
I'm Taylor.
My name is Owen.
Kids with disabilities.
I'm 9.5 years old.
So Owen was born with a rare genetic disorder called Escobar syndrome.
He's had 33 surgeries to date.
I love video games, my friends, my family, and again video games.
It's his way of interacting with his friends when he can't physically otherwise do it.
Using a wheelchair.
What I like about the adaptive controller is now everyone can play. And you can just say, all right, that's that button, that's that button, that's that button. Perfect.
One of the biggest fears early on is, how will Owen be viewed by the other kids?
Using his feet.
He's not different when he plays.
A girl uses the end of her arm.
No matter how your body is or how fast you are, you can play. It's a really good thing to have in this world.
When everybody plays, we all win. Microsoft.
So the important thing there is the everybody. Yeah? So the people that miss out are not just Owen. Yeah? It's not just Owen that misses out when it's not designed. Think of all the other kids in there that are having fun and also learning that people with disabilities are just routinely included in everything. That is the kind of the play that we're trying to make here. It's recognizing that it's not just about solving for the disability, it's making sure that we're routinely including everyone when everyone finds a way to play.
My name is...
Oh, sorry. Now, in a world of AI, technology that can understand, that can see, can hear, it's obvious that disability is a place where we can hack and we can create magic. You will all be able to think of things that you could do with computers that can see, can hear, can talk. Yeah? When you look at a challenge and when you recognize somebody being excluded by an existing system. Okay? So we're funding this. We have a $25 million grant program of Azure credit for universities, for startups. There's a really nice project happening at the University of Birmingham at the moment that we're funding that's basically saying, grab AI, grab your students with disabilities or your colleagues with disabilities or organizations that you work with, yeah? I hope you're using Office Lens. Okay, but tell us what you want to do with AI. Because we think we've done a pretty good job on PowerPoint and Windows and Office, right? But you can do so much more, right? You will have these ideas, but only by recognizing the people who are not able to use the systems that you have currently, yeah? And think about how you can use modern, cloud-connected, cognitive computing to routinely empower more and more people. And think of the innovation that you can spark in all students to work with people with disabilities and the impact that will have on society when people are realizing that a kid with dyslexia doesn't get removed to read yellow page books. They get to stay in the same project and they can do all the adaptations to routinely include. Okay, final slide. This is the Xbox Adaptive Controller box. I love that I get to stand on stage and talk about cardboard. This is modern Microsoft. The team who put the Xbox Adaptive Controller together realized that kids would be opening these on Christmas morning. And how on earth should we give them this amazing accessible experience when they can't even unwrap the box, and unpick the box? Yeah? So they basically got to work and went, well, everybody hates opening cardboard boxes, right, on Christmas morning, yeah? And snipping the cable ties off and all that kind of stuff. And they went, why does it need to be like that? This audience, it cannot be like that. We have literally won awards, packaging awards, for the cardboard box. This is amazing at Microsoft. But we basically designed it so that somebody with one arm could basically unwrap the box on Christmas morning and get started. And that really shows you its culture. That's not, this is not technically difficult. It's actually just saying, let's go the whole hog on this and routinely include. Thank you so much. I'm sticking around for the panel and I'll take questions, yeah? Thank you. Unplug?
A couple of questions now.
Please, yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Hector. That was just really inspiring, really heartwarming, really positive. I just love it, brilliant. We have time. We've got quite a long break, so we're going to sneak in a couple of questions because I think it'd be really great to do. So if we have any questions for Hector, I'd be happy to answer them. Any questions? Or do you want a cup of tea?
Thanks very much, Hector. Great presentation. So I've been talking to some colleagues about the translator,
yes,
the one that comes in as an add-in in PowerPoint. And the cautious ones say to me, okay, but if this is AI and all my words are going up to Microsoft in the sky somewhere, what about information security? So what can I tell them?
So you can tell them that it's fully GDPR compliant. Okay. All companies have to, we have to be very transparent where the data is going. Okay, let me just explain how it works. Okay, so the way that the subtitles are working is it's listening to what you're saying, yeah, and it's processing it. It's not storing that, it's not capturing that information at all. It's just processing it at the moment, okay? But to get accuracy, what it has to do is read your slides. So what it does is it creates a local AI model based on the content of your slides. So if you're giving a complex lecture on thermodynamics, yeah, and all these terms that the general word model would not understand, it reads your slides, yeah, builds a local voice model in conjunction with the general voice model and gives you the transcription. That doesn't mean that your data is not going anywhere. You know, it has opportunity to be intercepted. Would be the thing. We don't store the data. It's all GDPR compliant. It's all signed off. We can give you all of the certification on it and answer any of the questions. But that probably will not take away the fear. I got to be honest. People get funny about this. Not fun. Oh, it's genuine. Of course it is. Yeah. But we have to have this conversation about trust. Yeah. You know, we're all moving into a world where your data is going somewhere. Yeah. And it's who do you trust with your data? I mean, rather than try and design in local data centers, and we're opening up data centers in the UK regularly now. You know, we're working towards a world where that data will sit locally within your country, but it's still going to Microsoft. Yeah, so it's something that we need to get to. One thing that's interesting is this conversation about AI on the edge. So seeing AI, somebody nodded, I think you nodded to show that you'd used seeing AI. So seeing AI uses the camera, it understands my text, okay, and then it will read it to me. So if I'm blind, I can literally flash my camera over a piece of paper and it will read the text to me. Most people, when they see that happening, say, oh, that data's going somewhere. It's not. We designed, because we needed it to be lightning quick, yeah, we designed it so that it was AI on the edge. There's an AI voice model that recognizes text and then processes it into voice. We can do it offline. We can do this offline in the future, okay? We will be able to do captions offline in the future. We're just not there yet. So I think my honest answer to you is, if you're that worried about it, then you're just going to have to miss out. Yeah? And that's okay. You know, that's absolutely okay. But there will be other organizations that will help us get there, because we need the data. You know, when I look at the Urdu translation or even the German translation or the German transcription versus the English, it's completely inferior. This is good now, but when I first got it, it was not good. Yeah? It was worryingly kind of distracting. Yeah? We need more and more data to build the models, but when we eventually build the models, we can push them to AI on the edge and have them supported locally. We're just not there yet. Does that help? I mean, it does come down to trust at some point. Yeah. Great question.
It's a brilliant talk. I really enjoyed it. Just wondering about economics and how you're making this kind of tech cheap so that everybody can access it, because there's a lot of disabled people that you were saying are unemployed or don't have access to funds. So what are you doing to make it as cheap as possible?
So everything you've seen here is free, you know, or built in. You know, readily available. So, you know, Office is free in education. It's not free when you go to work, right? It's not free for people to have at home. But it is built into mainstream product. I mean, I've worked 20 years. You know, I've got the scars on my knees to show it, of me sitting next to wheelchairs, clamping expensive computers onto wheelchairs for eye control users and switch users. And, you know, fundamentally, the cost of sale is high. The cost of the expertise, the specialists, the assessment, the medical model is very expensive. Remember, this is magnification. Like, nobody says you need a certified professional to come and show you how to do this on your phones. What we want to do is get to a world where nobody goes, you need an assessment to access this equipment. We need you to understand that there's probably a 90% tool in your iPhone or in your Windows PC or in your Kindle. Like, we want to raise the whole industry on this, yeah? And to make this stuff normal, because there's enough volume. There's 1 in 6 people in the world that need some kind of adjustment on their technology to access it, okay? So the volume is there. It's just the companies who are doing the development work don't represent those groups. We can get there. It's going to be a volume play. But I had a pub conversation about this exact thing last night. We put Windows control eye control into Windows 10. $150 for a camera would allow all of you to control it with your eyes. And those muscular dystrophy kids could basically just go, oh, wow, I can do this, but maybe use a bit of voice and a bit of keyboard as well, okay? But they're not getting it because nobody is mission motivated to sell it to them. And it's really interesting that no matter how low cost we make this, it's not being as impactful as we want it to be. Remember, sticky keys, right shift key 5 times, you didn't know about, and it's been there since 95. We need society, we need every organization in society to ask who in their organization is disabled, make them confident to feel there's no risk in sharing, to bring this requirement out, yeah? And make sure that we're asking for these features to be improved and worked on and then made more readily available. But when I think about dictate, we did a demo with Gary at the back earlier where I dictated a slide, yeah? So I just literally spoke out a slide, yeah? And he was like sitting there going, I didn't know dictation was in PowerPoint. Well, you know, we're the AV guy expert, right? I mean, that's like, why would he need to know it? But I bet you the next talk he goes to, he's showing somebody that, yeah? Okay, so part of this is just thinking this is cool stuff, bringing up the profile, getting people with disabilities to own this agenda, yeah, and then we'll get there. How quickly we'll get there, I don't know. But it's definitely moving in the right trajectory.
All right,
Okay, yeah, great.
We'll have a quick break.
Come and grab me. I'm happy to have one-on-ones.
We're around to have a chat. He'll be joining us for the panel at 11. We have a couple of students from York University, a student from Leeds Beckett. We have a representative from Sky and Hector, and so we're going to have a fun session back here at 11 o'clock. Thank you, and thank you, Hector.
No problem.